Attorney General.
Yes. Sir, there is also a lot of talk. Where many people also told in the interviews which I conducted that the way Justice Krishna explained that 6 months of being a prime minister was little problematic, and it was like seen as helping Mrs. Gandhi, um, and also they said that judiciary was not seen, and that us having come under pressure. How or how what?
Yes. See, Justice Krishna was following the precedent that time. That time, if you lose an election petition, then conditional stay used to be granted. And that conditional stay was that you may remain prime minister, but you cannot vote. You can simply participate in the proceedings, but your voting power will not be there. Therefore, people started demanding her resignation, prime minister's resignation, saying we cannot have a person as prime minister who is not a full member. So her membership was somehow, the membership was somehow denuded to a large extent. And that is how, again, Mrs. Gandhi brought in amending laws saying the prime minister with retrospective effect, all the disqualification will go. But that was also struck down by the Supreme Court. And that is how, and that time actually all the people who were for civil liberties, they used to be also in the forefront in the bar functions. Mr. Tarkunde used to represent the bar. He was president. Mr. Govinda Mukhati was also vice president of Supreme Court Bar Association. And that is how it was a very different kind of situation in the country.
Okay, so in effect, even judiciary came under pressure, but then judiciary could fight back, unlike other arms of the executive.
Yes,
or
there was all the time, and like Justice H.R. Khanna, he gave his dissenting judgment in habeas corpus. Earlier, people were thinking that 3 judges will be there, which will be striking down the draconian laws. People thought that Justice Chandrachud and Justice Bhagwati also will be there, but somehow, they developed cold feet. Everybody knows that, and both Justice Chandrachud and Justice Bhagwati, they also regretted subsequently. All people are aware of that. So Justice H.R. Khanna, when he signed the judgment, after that, I would just quote our Justice Rajinder Sachar, who was a doyen of our PUCL. So he said, "I have signed my death warrant," because he knew that he will not be elevated as Chief Justice of the country. So he said, "I'm paying my price." So he was aware of that. That is how the entire situation was. And that time, if you see the quality of judges also, like Justice Krishna came during emergency or before that he was already there, and along with him we had like Justice Chandrachud, Justice Bhagwati, who became Chief Justices. Then Justice Pathak also joined the Supreme Court, and subsequently Justice Desai, Justice Chinappa Reddy, all these people. So we had stalwarts, we had giants in the legal field, and somehow now we miss them. I wish that we had people of that caliber and that kind of big heart in our Supreme Court.
So what about the PILs? Because you said, was it also a byproduct of the fight against emergency? Yes. The public interest litigation. So that became a big, big force later.
See, with the end of emergency, when people had this feeling of the euphoria about freedom, then people started approaching the Supreme Court, and the question of locus standi, the standing, used to be the biggest problem. Because our previous jurisprudence used to say that only a person who was suffering the illegalities could come before the court. Now, thing is, a social worker who is himself not a victim, could he represent hundreds or thousands of mute and meek people, voiceless people? So that came in like this Bhagalpur blinding case was the first case that time. Then when Swami Agnivesh came with the issues of bonded labor, we used to have bonded labor in huge numbers. Though bonded labor was abolished by legislation, but everywhere you will find bonded labor, and I was also appointed along with Mr. Ashok Srivastava, first court commissioners, to look into the issues of this thing, and on the basis of our report, thousands of bonded labor were released. It was not only released, state had an obligation to rehabilitate these bonded labor in the form of imparting training, imparting further education. So that is how it used to happen. So public interest litigation had three phases, I would like to say. One phase was the question of liberty, the question of very extremely poor people, or helpless people being granted relief by the Supreme Court or by the High Courts. Then came the issue of environment. The issue of environment in public interest litigation was developed primarily by Justice Kuldeep Singh and onwards. I mean, MC Mehta, all those line of cases, if you see. And that time, Bhopal gas tragedy also took place. And I'll narrate a simple anecdote about the first the public interest litigation in Delhi with regard to Sriram gas leak case. A young lawyer, MC Mehta, was running around the court saying he has to file a writ petition, saying that in Bhopal this thing has happened, in Delhi also it may happen. So people started laughing at him, saying, "Do you think in Delhi this will happen?" And on that day, this Sriram gas leak case happened. So that is how the MC Mehta's first petition was given relief, was taken note by the Supreme Court. Then subsequently, all cases, environmental protection, everything came forward. Then the issue of corruption in high public places. So where you find this Jain Hawala cases, where huge number of our political leaders, they were involved, and that is how. So these are the three phases I would like to emphasize. And another thing I would also like to put, it may not be, some people may contest it also. What I would say, the movement of public interest litigation gained momentum because of the contradiction within the judicial system. For example, Chief Justice Chandrachud was there, Justice Bhagwati was the number 2 judge, and who remained, and Justice Chandrachud remained Chief Justice for the longest period of time, that is about 7.5 years. So in a way, Justice Bhagwati tried to make a niche for him, work a niche for him, saying that there should be public interest litigation where letter petitions were encouraged. People, there were letter petitions in thousands, and that is how the birth of public interest litigation also owes to that kind of situation in our higher judiciary.
Which means that in both civil liberties movement as well as PIL, public interest litigations, emergency had a major role to inspire it, so that so that it become a part of our system.
Yes, without doubt. Because I mean, see, this is a kind of social movement, and that is why I always remember what Jayaprakash used to say. Like I told you earlier also, that revolution or social transformation is not made by leaders. It is made by masses, and it is the masses, they make history and social transformation. I mean, that is how we have seen this process altogether. And then I'll take you to the phase where this 1984 unfortunate, this horrendous anti-Sikh violence took place. So they are also, all the civil liberties movement, they played a very big role. So it was, and like both PUCL and PUDR came out with the book that was called Black Book, Who Are the Guilty, giving out all evidence, and then it also shook the nation. The entire world was also witness to this kind of horrendous killings, violence that was there, and the civil liberties movement, they played a very big role there. And then immediately after this November riots,
sir, in a way, the civil liberties movement took out the sectarian portion of it. It is not the Sikhs who were protesting against it. It is the civil liberties movement which was coming against documenting and helping people affected by the riots. Is it not?
Yes. See, like, I mean, after the tragic assassination of Mrs. Gandhi, Lajpat Bhavan in Lajpat Nagar. Lajpat Bhavan is the headquarters of People's of Servants of People's Society, Lok Sevak Mandal. So they're led by our Lala Lajpat Rai, and there are hundreds of people, and even thousands of people. They used to gather every day. And we used to have this, first was this rescue work, then the rescue and relief work. And people, I mean, Sikhs will be very few in that gathering, because the population-wise Hindus are definitely, non-Sikhs are much more. So hundreds of people would join together. From morning, work will begin. Like I was also given some charge to mobilize the doctors in AIMS and other places. So we'll move around, and the work continued for months together. And that is how people who came at that time, if you remember, our Laila Kabir, Mrs. Laila Kabir was there. Even Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, our president's wife, she was there. She used to come. And Mr. Chandrasekhar, Swami Agnivesh, all these people, see, the entire civil society of Delhi was gathering in that place, and we used to call ourselves Nagrik Ekta Manch. So you'll find huge number of people coming. And because the people of Delhi never, first of all, expected violence to take place in this large scale. And then, I mean, they could never imagine such a thing. But protests came, and there was total communal harmony, the kind of thing. Now, actually, we have to take lessons from that how politics which is promoting communalism or casteism, it can be countered by amity or harmony among different segments of people. And it is by mobilizing people's movement that we can move forward. That is the only way we can come out of it. Otherwise, always there will be communalism, there will be always this kind of violence. And naturally, some people would like to develop communal disharmony. I mean, everybody knows that. You also know.
Yeah. So you also talked about, your student days, Jayaprakash Narayan coming to Delhi University and addressing a huge gathering, which gave this slogan of Samburna Kranti.
Yes.
Yeah. So how did that evolve? But there was also a meeting later in Ramlila Maidan.
No, Ramlila Maidan, that incident was in 75. That was before the proclamation of emergency. Around that was after this 24th of June or something like that. But this thing happened in 74 itself, where Jayaprakash ji was addressing thousands of students in Maurice Nagar. You have seen Maurice Nagar, of course. On the one side, our law faculty is there, Ramjas College is there, and Maurice Nagar was a huge square where thousands of students were there. So it was a continuous development. And again, after emergency was lifted and Janata Party came to power, so again there was a huge meeting, rally in Ramlila Maidan. I was, of course, I was there with some of our leaders. Mr. Samarendra Kundu, who became a Minister of State, External Affairs. He's from Odisha, so I was with him that time, and we were moving together. So these are very enriching experience.
How was that atmosphere there? So how was JP received by Delhi University students?
Because huge! I mean, see, that time
was going on.
Like for us, Jayaprakash Narayan was the prophet. I mean, his presence was like it was lightning. Not only youth, all political parties, they would listen to him. So sometimes now also in our talk among friends, I mentioned that at the moment what we need is a person of the caliber of Jayaprakash Narayan at this juncture also. Yes. Actually, I mentioned this to our Sarath Pawarji at one point of time, and he laughed.
Yeah. So one last question: how do you? Because many people say there is an undeclared emergency these days. You went through the declared emergency those days. Yes. How do you see these statements?
See, I do not lose hope. That is number one. I have tremendous hope in our younger generation. So they will not let any kind of fascism or fascistic tendency in the authorities. And whatever happens, we'll get over. I mean, that I am sure. And for that, actually, see, because we have to realize where the problems lies, what are the sources, where the threat to democracy comes. And for us, Constitution is our Bible. So people who accept Constitution to be the supreme document, supreme authority in our democracy, all of us should be together. And like I told you earlier, we now also need a leader of the caliber of Jayaprakash Narayan. It has not happened so far, but you never know, something will happen, someone will come. And it is basically the struggle by the poor people, the working class, the peasants. Like you have seen the farmers movement now. So the way they were mobilized, so we have hopes in all these people's movement. If people's movement will come forward, then I think any threat to democracy or human rights can always be met. And there should be no fear. Because ultimately, you also know that the strongest of fascist forces, they came to an end. When Hitler came to an end, Mussolini came to an end. So we should not bother about these things and say that the country should cower down before power. No, we should not. We should not.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. It was very enlightening. I hope the civil liberties movement and public interest litigation, the spirit of all it will continue and prevent the country from being taken over by what you call fascist or fascist forces. One will say, and thank you very much for your time.
So I must thank you, Mr. Cherian. It was lovely speaking to you. And we should continue our conversation on different issues. And it is really lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.